allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome to the first meeting of this season of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. Pretty much it's the same team as last time. Brian should be joining us. He's the construction representative. And Gary Carrero is taking the place of Tom Schmidt as the Finance Committee representative. And I hope he'd be here today. He's not here yet. And Melissa Pacheco is the representative of the school. And I know she was looking forward to this, but maybe something came up. But we do have a quorum, so we can conduct business. And thank you, everybody else, for being here. Ed, you all set? Oh. He only told us this 5 minutes ago. We've already forgotten. Oh. Okay. I do want to move ahead here to mention the next meeting. We normally would have these meetings every 2 weeks, but there is a conflict on the 14th, and somebody recommended we do it next week unless there's any objections. That would be unusual. We don't intend to have this be a weekly meeting. It's every other week. But that would be the only meeting we would have in December. We wouldn't be meeting like on the 21st or something. It's too close to Christmas. So unless there's an objection, or if we want to discuss it further, I'm amenable to that, but we would schedule the next meeting of the CIPC for next week, December 7th at 3 p.m. So what is the pleasure of the committee?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good? Okay, yeah, we'll do that. And that'll be it for 2022, and we'll start anew in 23. I don't know what the date would be. We'll get that out to you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is committee reorganization. That's code for, we need a new chairman and we need a new secretary, and I don't think we have a vice chair anyway. And, but anyway, I've been doing this now just for the last year. I've enjoyed it, and I will do it again, but I don't want to get in the way of anybody else who might be looking to, improve their resume.
I'll make that motion.
I was going to
What?
say, I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now, just for the record, is that to renominate me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I tell you, what is this, like a banana republic or something? I don't know. Muriel has been our secretary for many, many years, and I thank her for that, but she has indicated she cannot continue at this time, and so we would have a vacancy for a recording secretary. And, we can wing it for a little while with one of us taking the minutes, but we would like to recruit a new secretary, so.
Who's not here?
Brian, Gary, and Melissa. Or we could just go and today, Jim, can you take the minutes today? Sure. And we'll keep these minutes brief, and maybe we could discuss it at the next meeting when everybody's here, and then we could see if somebody else will come forth. Otherwise, we'll maybe just rotate it or something.
She looks like she's gonna volunteer. But
I was going to nominate Nicole.
Oh, absolutely not, no, sorry.
Or
no.
Melissa.
Well, I'm amenable to that. Well, all right. Well, we'll get by today, and we'll talk about the secretary position on December the 7th, okay? All right. So, in the usual drill here, as we know, Jim sends out a letter to all of the managers asking them to line up the capital. Melissa, good to see you.
I nominate Melissa.
Yeah, we were just trying to find somebody for secretary, but we were unable to fill the position, so Jim is going to take the minutes today, and we can discuss it at next week. We didn't nominate you in absentia. Yeah, so I was just I tried to get out of it. They renominated me to be the chair, but if you'd like to be the chair, I will yield.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So I was just starting by saying that the next meeting will be next week on the 7th. That's unusual because we normally have these every other week. Hope that can meet with your schedule. but it's just an oddity, and we've got another meeting on the 14th in this room, so if that works for you, that'll be our next meeting.
What time are we doing the meetings?
3.
Is there any way to do them a little bit later, because I work, so it's difficult to. Is there a-
I'm amenable, it's up to the committee, basically.
The four of us are in the building, so it doesn't really matter.
And could we move it to 4? Is that a difficult time?
Well, it's, the only problem with that, and it's not a big problem, and sometimes you get a meeting that can go on a couple of hours, and we're here till 6, and some people have to get on the road. That's been a problem before, that's why, we actually had it at one time at 4 o'clock and moved it back to 3.
3:30?
Wait. You wanna try
Let's-
3:30?
Yeah, let's do, sounds good.
Okay, so that meets
Makes
everybody's
sense.
approval?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Thank
then,
you.
therefore, no, that'll work out fine. We try to keep these to 90 minutes, so that'll get us out around 5. So the next meeting then will be December 7th, but at 3:30. Okay, so noted. Good, we like having you here, so that's good. All right, getting back on track here, what we're talking about is simply the process that Jim has sent out to all the managers, the list of capital improvements, and we have those, and I don't have it in front of me, but I know you sent it, Paula had sent it out to us. You should have received an email from Paula that has a number of documents. You did have a list, if I recall. I don't have it on my computer.
A list of people coming in?
No, there was a list of projects. Was that simply a recap of last year's? 'Cause
I have mine here as well, your request.
No, we didn't get that yet. I didn't get it.
yeah, that was,
I got the
all
new one-
copies, but not.
The
like a
new
list.
ones. I
I
got the
sent
new
the
ones.
copies, I probably didn't give you the spreadsheet, I can send
Right.
that out.
yeah,
after
okay.
this
Yeah, we
meeting.
have copies of all the requests, but
Right.
not the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Well, okay, I know you'd sent me a copy, but it didn't have any numbers in for 2024 fiscal year, did it?
This may be updated then, because these numbers here are pink or yellow on this screen, 2024.
Well, they are, okay. All right, well, you can send that to us. And
Yep, I will do that.
we'll talk about that next time, okay? All right, but we have all the materials for today.
Yeah.
So, this, as you know, is a process of listening to all the department heads and their capital needs and explaining them to us. We don't make decisions here at these meetings. What we do is we go through the whole process and invite everybody in who needs to be in and review all the requests at a point in time after we've done it individually. And then we start talking about which ones we set priorities. If you recall, last year we had the number 1 priorities, number 2 and number 3. And we try to get to as many as we can based on the cash flow, the free cash that we have. I don't know what the free cash is at the moment, but we'll find that out before too long, and that, of course, enters into our thinking. Also, this year, we do have some things that we paid for with ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act, for the general audience, and we can be talking about that as well. We try to line up all the projects one way or another, regardless of source of funding, and have it go through the drill, go through the process so we understand it. And these recommendations ultimately find their way on a warrant article at town meeting. But before then, the Finance Committee reviews them, and also the Board of Selectmen. So, that's the process. You're all familiar with it, and again, thank you for joining us again for another year. All right, so unless there are questions, comments, thoughts, complaints? Well, time's up. 5 seconds for complaints, but hearing none, we'll proceed. And the way we're going to do this is just the way it's on the posting, the presentation of the fiscal year 24 capital projects. I can't believe it's fiscal year 24 that we're talking about. And we'll just go in this order. I didn't set the batting order, but it looks fine to me. And we'll start with the treasurer, Sue. You have an item here, and maybe you could take us through that and explain it. I think it's a very interesting one.
I'm asking for $500,000 per year for capital stabilization. Capital stabilization would be a benefit to all departments and to the general public as well. This is separate from stabilization account and can be specified to a particular project. First, this would help to maintain or improve our credit rating which is essential to borrowing for large projects and will also be necessary. The better our rating is, the lower the borrowing rates will be, which will result in lower costs and therefore lower taxes. Second, if a department is aware of a project that may be needed in 5 years from now, and the estimated cost is $1 million, we could designate $200,000 per year to that specific project, having it funded in advance. This would eliminate the need to borrow and eliminate the need to pay high interest in borrowing expenses. This not only saves money for the taxpayer, but also every dollar not spent on interest will also be available for budget purposes. With rising interest rates, the savings can be significant. And some of this, that was my summary that I submitted, and then I have some additional information here. The stabilization fund has two components: general stabilization and capital stabilization. The general stabilization fund is available for emergency expenses. The capital stabilization fund is available for capital expenses and is used in emergencies and/or to avoid minor, what I consider minor borrowing. How is it funded? Annually, the town should be voting at town meeting to add to this fund. The fund should have a minimum balance equal to 5 to 7% of the total town budget. Once the minimum required amount is achieved, the town should continue to fund this account annually, as the excess balance can be used instead of borrowing. That initial 5 to 7% is there for the absolute emergency situations. Why is it important? If properly funded, the fund can be another source for capital improvement planning committee to utilize for the many necessary expenses of the various town departments. The town can also, with careful and future planning, avoid minor borrowing. The stabilization fund is a key factor when the town's bond rating is set, and is strongly recommended that the town maintain a minimum of 5% of its annual budget in stabilization, and 7% is much more favorable. Our current situation, we only have 1.3 million in the fund, 1.325 in the 1.370 and 1.325 is in general stabilization, and only 45,000 is in capital stabilization. The town of Westport needs to treat this fund as a fixed expense and annually budget a reasonable amount for this fund. My recommendation is 500,000 annually until the required percentage is achieved. Once the minimum is achieved, the town will need to continue adding to this fund and to look at a 5 to 10 year capital plan to determine the annual amount necessary. Additionally, if a department is aware of a project that may need 5 years from now, estimated at $1 million, we could designate 200,000 per year to that specific project, having it funded in advance, eliminating the need for borrowing. And then I have attached here the potential savings of what it would cost. Right now, interest rates, I did it at 5, 7, and 9%. The potential in savings at 5% is $275,000. The potential in saving at 7%, which is closer to our current rates, $385,000. Potential in savings at 9%, $495,000, and that's $1 million for 10 years. And the fact is, unfortunately, I'm hearing talk of rates going as high as 11%. So borrowing is going to cost us dearly as we go forward. Our borrowing that we've been doing over the last few years, we've had some incredibly low rates. Sometimes it was almost like getting the money practically for free. I mean, 1%, less than, we've done some borrowing at less than 1%. You know, most of our borrowing is around 2% or less. And so we've done well with our borrowing, but if we're looking at 9, 10, 11% interest rates, borrowing is going to have a significant impact on our budgets. So planning ahead is what I'm trying to accomplish.
Maybe a little background here to help us. As an aside, the discussion of having a robust capital account has come up before. And for one reason or another, we generally don't have the money to do it. And for whatever reason, it's been not considered seriously, at least since I've been around. Interestingly, when we had my first excursion with government, which was the Westport Financial Future Project of 2015, that was one of the recommendations of that. I'm not claiming victory here, I'm just saying that had been acknowledged that is a way to go. You build a fund up, a capital fund, and then you spend it only if you have it. But you need to fund it on a disciplined basis. I personally like the idea, obviously. It's a good practice to have, but we have to be clear because I think some people would be confused. And this would be a major decision for the town. So it's not really a capital item like a fire truck or something else, but it certainly is worthy to discuss it at the Capital Improvement Planning Committee because this could be a major development if embraced ultimately by, I think the Finance Committee would be greatly interested in this idea. I don't know if they have discussed it at any of their meetings. Gary's not here today, but it has come up from time to time when I was on the Finance Committee. But we got to be clear on the nomenclature. First of all, we do have a stabilization fund, AKA the rainy day fund.
Correct.
And that's the one that has $1 million in it. You have it written down.
It's actually 1.370, and the majority of it is in the general stabilization, which means it can be actually used for any purpose that we really need, if anything. But then there's capital stabilization. There's two types of stabilization. The bond committee, when they're reviewing for rates, looks at it as a whole. But we can designate portions of it specifically for capital stabilization, which is primarily what we really need. We could actually transfer, if we wanted to increase our capital stabilization, we could transfer the $1 million over from the general stabilization to the capital stabilization, but we're still stuck with 1.37 in the stabilization fund. It doesn't increase our stabilization at all. We should have at least about $5 million in there, is what our minimum goal is. But in the meantime, even it would be considered part of that stabilization fund. For example, if, say, one of these projects that comes across our desk at this meeting is that $1 million project, and we deposit $200,000 a year, and they say, oh, it's not going to come up for 4 or 5 years. Even if we don't have it fully funded when that project needs to be done, we might need to borrow a small amount instead of having to borrow $1.25 million. Sure. And it just saves the town so much more money. And these days, that's what we need to do. It's be throwing the money away to interest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of financial arguments for why a capital fund is a good idea. Now, just for the record, though, we have a capital fund right now.
We do.
And I think, Nicole, I recall you telling us one time at the Finance Committee way back when, I was asking what was in there, and it had to do with selling vehicles or something, that proceeds of that kind, or equipment.
I don't think so. I think it got funded at town meeting at one point in time.
Yeah.
I do know that historically there have been deposits to it. I want to say last year, I think we only put $50,000 into the state
Not
stabilization.
capital, the regular stabilization.
Regular stabilization. We need to, going forward, actually specify capital stabilization when we're at town meeting, for the town meeting warrant, when we're doing these. I'm asking for some kind of bonus money from the free cash to help build up
Right.
the fund. But we should make it a significant part of our budget, our regular annual budget. There should be a certain amount. I don't know how much is budgeted this year for stabilization. I'm going to guess.
It doesn't get budgeted.
It usually does.
No.
It
It's
could.
an article.
But usually
It's an
the end,
artic-
right, whatever's left remaining goes into stabilization, but we could budget 500 for stabilization, then do whatever's left.
Yeah,
Kind of cleans up the budget at the end. of
Yeah.
town meeting.
I
Well,
don't
go
know
ahead.
if you can budget for stabilization because money in and money out is a 2/3 vote. It has to be a 2/3 vote.
I
um,
believe you can, but we can check.
Yeah, we can look at it, but I believe it's a 2/3 vote.
It is a 2/3 vote, definitely to come out, I'm assuming.
and we can,
And we do a 2/3 vote to go in.
Yeah.
That's why it's a separate article to put money in the stabilization. Usually whatever's left in free cash at the end of the town meeting.
and we can put, like I say, if we wish to designate for specific capital projects, that's a great way of setting it up so that it's actually like we're making our principal payments ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather stay with, for now, because this is the first time we discuss this, as to conceptually what we're doing here. How we do the mechanics of it is for another day. And in the end, a lot of other people are going to be weighing in on this before town meeting. We would need, for us to go anywhere, we need the support of the Finance Committee, and we would need the support of the Board of Selectmen. I think everybody would agree it's a good idea and maybe long overdue. But let me just understand that we have a capital fund now, funded by whatever reason it was. We have 40,000 in it, did you say?
45.
45,
45, yeah. And the putting money in and the taking money out, is that like the regular stabilization fund where it has to be approved at town meeting, 2/3 of the vote?
yes,
But does that, well, ultimately, any capital expenses are approved at town meeting, so there's no conflict there. It'd be just a different way of town meeting approving it. But if we wanted to purchase a piece of capital equipment, whatever it would be, a truck or something, we could show the source of funds to be the capital fund if it was so.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And, but it's not, we're not setting up a new fund. I don't think some people are aware of this, existence of this fund. And so it's not, if we have a fund already, now we're going to use it and we're going to fortify it with money so that it can be employed for capital projects. That's, I think, an easier sell than starting up the fund from scratch.
yes.
It does exist. We don't need to do anything more for that. Not, the question here is funding it and the use of it ultimately and how it fits into the capital expenditure process.
Correct.
Okay, well, those are all my questions, just want to be clear, so discussion. We've been discussing, but further discussion, I should say. Now, what might be a good idea, though, is when we get the full board of people here to weigh in, particularly Gary, representing the Finance Committee, I think he'd be interested in this and also would have a lot of comments about it. Personally, I like the idea. I think other towns do this. And there are various ways of going about capital approaches. I attended a meeting once as a Finance Committee member in another town. It was like a symposium workshop, and I think it was up in Norton, but there was a town administrator there who talked about how they do capital. And they had a CIPC committee, like we do, but they talked about funding it. And what they do is pre-fund it, and they only spend what they have, or they use it if they don't have enough money to buy a particular item, they would at least use it to offset the cost.
Exactly.
So I think it's, I like the idea, but I think it needs a lot of further discussion. It is a different breed of cat for this committee, because it's not an item, you know, like a fire truck or something, or a playground. It's.
I like to think outside that box.
Well, good. I think this is timely and certainly worth a lengthy discussion to which the Capital Improvement Planning Committee would contribute its opinion.
Did
So-
everybody get a copy of that?
Yep.
Also?
Yep.
That what I was kind of just, did, okay.
Yeah, it's well
'Cause if
written.
not, I would forward
Yeah.
it to everybody.
It explains it, and yeah, I saw the thing here about the potential savings. Interest rates are going up,
Unfortunately.
so I put this money aside and.
Or fortunately, if
Collect
you've got
interest, right?
money to save.
Well, yeah, this is, but even aside from the change in interest rates, having the discipline of a capital fund, and if we could get it to be large enough, then that would take care of our capital needs on a multi-year basis, assuming continued funding, of course.
Correct.
Okay, well, I appreciate this being a discussion item because I think it's something the town would benefit from, and to see it maybe come to fruition or to become larger and more usable than what we have now. So we're not doing anything with the capital fund we have today, right? Nicole, it just sits there.
Yeah.
Nice to have an extra 45,000, but,
Sits there and, yep. Plus interest,
yeah. Well,
minimal interest.
okay, well, there's no vote required here.
Getting
I think-
better.
Coming up, I know.
I think there's general interest in this, I detect that.
I do have a question though.
Yes.
So what's currently in the capital?
45,000.
The
Just
capital stabilization account only has 45,000 in it, at this time.
So if I, last year, I think one of you said that 50,000 went into it last
The
year.
general stabilization account.
There's two stabilization accounts, general and capital.
Yep. So the-
I think that we should be focused on the capital stabilization for future deposits at this point. We have enough for the 1.3 that's in the general stabilization should get us by, I would think, for any emergency that might come up that the town would need it for.
So how did the 45,000 go into the capital? Was that like started years ago and just nothing ever happened with it? Okay,
Yes.
fair enough, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I forget the details on that. Well, anyway, that's interesting, very interesting discussion. Okay, so we've gone as far as we can take this item today, so why don't we thank you for bringing it forth. I think it's a very good idea and will help the town plan for capital needs, and assuming we have some money to put in there, that would be a good use of our money. And we know that when you get that exhibit there, you'll see the capital needs of this town are extensive, usually millions of dollars per year, as we all know. We grouse over that every year, and we have to do what is like a triage here to figure out the ones we want, which is oftentimes difficult. Okay, good. Anything else from the Treasury Department?
No, not at this time.
Sue, thank you. Nicole, you're up next. You have some
I'm
ideas
with
for
her on
us.
this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, my request is for software. Basically, would be upgrading the accounting program into the cloud. It's with the same company that we're with now. It's a necessary evil. We keep hearing from Keith Novo that the server is at max capacity. We can't fit anything else. He wants us to use the Google Drive to store
Mhm.
things because there's no room on the server, and our accounting software sits on the server. So, the quote that we have is the 120,000. The migration is estimated at 55, and the subscription is 65. So to be honest with you, I don't think we need the whole 120. I think we only need like 60, like half of it. Because the software, the subscription piece, we would need to do an increase in the subscription probably for once it gets started, until this one. So we pay twice a year now, so January, we're gonna pay the current subscription, and that'll take us until July 1st, so I'm pretty sure we might not need the whole 120. I'm just waiting to find out when we can start moving this into the future.
Nicole, will Keith Novo be addressing this? He's coming at our next meeting. I know you've probably talked to him about it. And is he fully supportive of this, and
Yes.
even including the selection of the vendor Springbrook?
Yep. The thing too is, I think that's one of the things that's holding up our laptops. Because every program that we use in the town has to be loaded on, like if it has to be loaded on the laptops, on the hard drives, and we don't have to load the server software, we can use this. I think that's one of the things that's holding us up for
Yeah.
getting new equipment.
We're finding some of the older software is not compatible with the new operating system, so.
Yeah.
And just also to be clear on this, this includes the collections for the tax collector's office, my collector's side, the water billing,
Yep.
and
Treasurer's office.
some for the
assessors.
treasurer's office, which may, right now, we had gotten away from using SoftWrite in the treasurer's office and went with Zobrio. And at this time, I'm hoping that this program, when we get it up and running, will be easier for the treasurer's office to also utilize, and we can go back to utilizing this, and that would eliminate the need for the SoftWrite, the Zobrio software.
Which would save us, what, 15,000 a year?
Right, about 15,000 a year.
Did Zobrio take the place of a different system at one point in time?
Excel?
It's the treasurer's office was using a combination of SoftWrite and Excel. And the problem with the Excel is that although certain fields were supposed to be locked, they could be changed and unlocked, and that's where we were running into some difficulties in the prior years, that numbers weren't, instead of importing the way they should, were being changed.
Yeah. It seems like we talk about this along the way from time to time, and it's sort of like it never gets resolved. Is this like, if we do this, for these departments and these functions, obviously this is not involving the schools, not involving police? Or
It does involve the
Actually, it does
schools.
involve the schools.
Oh, okay.
So
Because
the
this
schools
would
use the
be-
software.
They use SoftWrite, the accounting software. So with this program, it does include the schools, because they have the accounting piece. So they use the accounting piece on their end, they use purchase orders, requisitions, everything there. So it would include them. It's cloud-based, so again, it would negate the need for Log Me In. So like when we work from home, we use Log Me In to log into our hard drives for like, to use the accounting program. I wouldn't need to do that, so we wouldn't need it because everything's cloud-based. Reports are more user-friendly. A lot of people, especially at the school, have asked for specific reports to be seen different ways. And for us to do that, we have to call engineering, have them create a report. This is what we need. You go back and forth, figure it out. This, it comes with a report, like writing program piece of it, so that you can go in, you want to see A, B, and C, and it'll create your report for you, and, you know, just the way you want. It's more, a lot more user-friendly, because it's all my department heads, all clerks. I taught everybody how to use software and run reports, and I continue to teach. Because it's a lot easier, if I'm not here, they can just go into the accounting program, print the reports they want to look at, expense reports, revenue reports, so this is a lot more user-friendly for everybody too.
Jim, do you know if Keith Nova has brought this item up before in his numerous conversations with us about
I don't think he
software?
brought it up in front of this group, no.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It may not be a capital expense either, but it's an expense that we need
Yeah,
to fund.
It's
It-
critical.
and why would it not be a capital expense?
Well, it's not a piece of equipment per se, it's software.
Software, yeah.
Well, maybe the initial purchase would justify the rest of its maintenance, yearly maintenance and.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it
License.
might be half, because it's just the migration piece of it.
Yeah.
So for them to come in, bring all our stuff up into the cloud, and for training, basically.
Yeah. But I didn't really finish my earlier thought here. It covers these things and now the school as well, but like the assessor's office, is this something that all of the departments in the town
Yes.
will be using at some point?
Yes,
I mean, is this it? I mean, this is like
yes.
a money pit with, Oak Island. It's just it's software, it's just another million here, another million there.
Every department uses the accounting software in some aspect.
Hmm.
So the assessor's office uses it for part of the abatements, the bills that go over to the collector's office that, you know, real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, boat. Each department uses it, like I said, for expense reports, revenue reports.
Mhm.
Treasurer's office uses it for revenue. Water billing, we do all the water billing in there.
It is
So-
not an assessing program, though.
No, it's not an assessing program, it's not a specific collecting,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's your general financial suite, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
And we're reaching the point where they're not gonna service it anymore, unless
Right.
Yeah.
they're gonna require us.
Isn't that
to.
the truth? Yeah.
So
It's like our iPhones, you know.
Yeah, we need to, it's a mandatory upgrade, I think, at this point, not only for ourselves, so that we can hold it on the laptops, but because they're not gonna service it
Yeah,
much longer.
yeah, that's the reality here. Okay, any further comments? I mean, I would like to have Keith address this next week. He's probably gonna be wanting to address some other things too. You'll be here, of course, and talk to him about it, and see if we can gain a consensus around it. I mean, it's something that we've gotta do sooner or later in spite of my complaining, but, it's just the way it is, and we've gotta be equipped. And you're right, these things, they don't support, at some point in time, they cut you off, and I think that's I won't get into that now. I think they got us by the throat is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Okay, well, this is timely also, and certainly needed in the town of Westport. We welcome any public comments, by the way, here, so feel free to speak up. And, okay, Nicole, anything else in that? Anything else in general?
No, thank you.
Okay, next is Board of Health. Jim, we don't,
This is an easy one, he's withdrawn his request for this year, two of them were for next year, and the year after. He was looking at the restrooms,
Yeah.
the transfer station for this year, but they're going with portable units for this year and next year.
okay.
So he does not have the request before the committee at this point.
Now, does that solve the problem we have with the estate that had come down and did a review on this?
It is supposed to. I sent the information up to them last week, and we're just waiting to hear back. Hopefully they've released their order. We should
Okay.
find out next week or so.
All right, well, that's a separate item from the CIPC. I was just curious. Okay, well, that works out fine. Next is the library. George, come right up here. This is microphones. And tell us about your project here, which is pretty understandable from the write-up. We appreciate it.
Relatively straightforward.
Does everybody know you here?
I think I do. Yes.
Pete.
Hi, I'm George. Greetings, everyone. So I am here today to tell you about the lovely, lovely library we have and the air we like to keep lovely at the library.
We agree.
So the current system that we have is coming to the end of its life cycle. Currently, there's 4 HVAC units at the library, 1 ground unit and 3 rooftop units, as well as a AC humidity control unit that takes care of our local history room and archive. That one's very important to us, as I'm sure you can understand, because the stuff we have in that room is irreplaceable. Some of it is manuscripts, maps, art. So that's a very important piece for us. We've been having increasing maintenance costs as we do get closer to the end of its projected span. In the last couple of years, we've had some different intake ducts go that had to be replaced and some fans fail. Last year, we lost heat for 2 days. Luckily, GM Refrigeration out of Fall River was able to replace the part after I felt really bad for the maintenance tech. He was out there all day, he had to make a couple trips to get the right piece to replace it, but they were able to repair it. But as we keep proceeding, that's going to happen more often. Currently, we're projecting an estimated cost of about $64,500. That's a rough estimate. And as I said, basically since 2009, we've spent about $5,500 in maintenance onto the system. That number could be doubled if we factored in how much we've spent on supplemental air filtration with some of the additional air filter units we have inside the library. So hopefully if we did get a newer system with better filtration, that might be able to relieve some of the pressure on our maintenance budget, which is very bare bones at the present moment.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear what we're discussing, so comments, questions?
I have a question, and actually this is for Jim. Have we looked into green communities for this?
Not for the library, no. Right now, we're looking at green communities for this building.
Right.
And they're going for a one-time grant. I think we're eligible for a one-time $500,000 grant that we applied for HVAC for this building. Maybe something to look upcoming years, yes, because I think we're forward. What is it? You may know better than myself. Is it a 200 or 250 yearly grant that we get?
I think so.
that we can apply for, and it's a
Yeah.
one-time 500, so that
Right,
might.
so I mean, if we can
fall.
apply for a $250,000 green community grant in fiscal '25 for this, that
Are
would
you all
just,
electric now, or are you?
electric and gas,
Yeah.
is natural gas, they have natural gas
It's
over
just they
there
don't
too,
have
yeah.
natural gas for the heating system, yeah.
Yeah, something to look at.
George, if money's tight and you had to pick one, what would be the ones that are more critical? Obviously, all three are going back to
What's-
2006, 2009 at the time,
Yeah.
but
It's kind of one system, so I wouldn't really know,
Oh,
without
okay.
having somebody really take a look at it, if you
Yeah.
could break out, a component and replace, just one of the units, I'm not sure.
yeah, okay. Yeah, it may not be possible, I was just wondering. Sometimes when we can space it out, like police vehicle, they do a couple of years or something.
Given the way that the system's set up, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it's definitely one of those things, especially with the green communities
Mhm.
focus. If we could, upgrade the system inside the library to have more control over the different zones of heating and cooling, that
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah,
also increases savings as well.
yeah. Okay, well, it's not an issue for today, it's, in this process, after we review all these requests from the various departments, we do have a day when we talk about the funding, what are we gonna get the money for this one, that one. We pretend that we have unlimited funds the first few meetings, then we realize reality sets in. But these are certainly needed. We love our library and want to keep it going. And I just can't believe the time has flown by. When I think of the library's building is new and great, and what do you need all these things for? But look at this, 2006, 2009.
Mhm.
These things have been around. Yeah, they don't last forever, do they?
No, they don't, especially when they're in constant use the way they are. so.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any further questions for George today? Okay, we'll put it in the list for now and, go through the process and see where it ranks later on and keep you posted.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being in today.
Anytime.
Next item is the cemetery department. Is this gonna be long, because Phyllis will have Dana?
This will be very quick.
All right, just-
So, Cemetery Department is looking for one tractor, a small tractor that we had an excavator last year through the perpetual care funds. They're looking for a small tractor right now. Their existing one is getting costly to repair. It's old. They're having difficulty getting parts for it. They asked that we include it on the list. They're still working on pricing for it. Assuming the pricing will probably be closer to 75, but they've asked for 100 at this point, just to put it as a placeholder. And as I get more information, I will distribute it to the group.
They didn't have a submission on this, did they?
They did not know.
Okay, well, if they can do that, just for the record, but it's pretty cut and dried, and, what did we purchase before? Was that a backhoe?
It was a mini excavator.
Mini excavator, okay. And this is,
This is a small tractor.
need them both, obviously. What do they use the tractor for primarily? The grass?
Mainly backfilling, so,
Yeah.
so when they excavate, they remove all the dirt from the site and then they bring it back and, they dump it from the dump truck into the tractor and then put it into the,
Do you think we could get funds from the perpetual care fund? for
I
this?
think we need to look at it.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll look at that, and that's that, and we'll take it into consideration. Anybody have questions or comments? None? Okay, Dana, welcome.
Hi.
Feel free to come up and make your presentation that I think you're familiar with. We have material on this, as you know.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for having me today. So I am here to appeal to the committee about replacing and/or upgrading our two town playgrounds. The two town playgrounds include the Annex Playground, which in the view of the Recreation Department and Recreation Commission needs a total replacement. And then the Bicentennial Playground, which is in need of upgrades or repairs. So the estimated cost is a little all over the map. We have been working hard to get various quotes from different playground companies and professionals. And our lowest quote to date was $221,000, and that's just to replace the Annex Playground. The highest quote for replacing the Annex Playground was $559,183.71. So you can see it's a big range. So we're trying to find a middle ground there for replacing the annex. And replacing that playground obviously depends on what we want to happen in that playground. So for example, if you want a zip line in the playground, this might be more expensive than a set of swings. So part of the design process, it can vary. So, you know, if you want a climbing structure, swings, slide, you know, something that spins, you know, you can get a basic quote for that, but, you know, depending on each company, it varies because of their modernization of their designs and things of that nature. So we're trying our best to do our research on all that to get a sense of the cost. So we did get 2 quotes that were in the more of the 300,000 range for replacing the annex. So that's kind of where we're seeing it for that. The Bicentennial Playground gets a little tricky too, because if we don't totally replace that playground, there are certain things we can do that will help upgrade that playground without having to replace it, which would obviously be more cost effective. But the reality is, the Annex Playground was built in 1994 and is 28 years old. It's a wooden playground, and from what I understand, it's originally built by volunteers, and the wood is rotting, cracking. It just needs to be replaced. It's in tough shape. The Bicentennial Playground was built in 1999 and is 23 years old. So compared to the Annex Playground is, you know, younger in a sense. But any playground over 10 years old is starting to get outdated in terms of safety, ADA compliance, just general wear and tear and maintenance. So compared to other towns that are near Westport, our playgrounds are in tough shape. And that being said, I have noticed comments on social media through the town platforms, and I did take the liberty of taking some pictures of those comments and include them in those packets. So, you know, it's just a snapshot to show that the community is aware that our town playgrounds are in dire need of replacement or help, and that a lot of community members choose to go to other town playgrounds because they don't feel our town playgrounds are up to par. We did have John LaRue, who is a certified playground safety inspector in 2021, look at both of our town playgrounds. He reported that the Annex Playground should be replaced as soon as possible. His quote in an email to me on March 23rd of 21 was, "If I were to gamble, I would say the playground at the Annex will end its life at the end of 2021. It is time." So here we are in 2022 going into 2023, and due to lack of funding and manpower, we haven't been able to do anything to improve our town playgrounds. So I also took the liberty of attaching pictures in the packets that you may have seen of some of the problems with our 2 town playgrounds. But before we go to those pictures, I just wanted to also say, you know, one of the goals is to try and make our town playgrounds accessible to all. So in terms of wheelchair accessibility, our playgrounds are very limited. The ground area is currently wood chips and should be replenished every year. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done due to lack of funding and manpower with the Bicentennial Playground. I have been trying to replace those wood chips for that playground, and I have no one to do it. So, like, I can purchase them with money out of recreation revolving account, but due to being short-staffed in the highway department, I've been trying to get volunteers to help spread the chips. I haven't been able to get anyone to spread the chips, even if I got them delivered. So that's a little disheartening. So if we were to move into the modern era and do more of a rubberized surface, we wouldn't have to replenish with wood chips every year, and it would be more accessible to folks in wheelchairs, walkers, so that it's just kind of brought up in quality. So at the Bicentennial Playground back in 2021, when we had that playground reviewed by John LaRue, he did say that he reported that the playground might get another few years if certain aspects of the playground were improved, such as my biggest concern there are the stairwells within the playground structure. Some of those stairwells have the plastic covering has like come apart, and so there's some exposed rusted metal, which we hope to be able to replace those stairwells. So for example, if we don't have the funds to replace the whole playground structure, I'm looking into getting a quote that would just replace those stairwells. And I think there's like 2 stairwells that would affect. I've asked a couple times, for the quote, and hopefully we'll get it soon. So unfortunately, like right now, I don't know how much that would cost for that one repair. Obviously, it wouldn't cost as much as replacing the whole playground. We also have a couple missing swings at that playground. So I did get a quote for that. I believe it's $1,300 to add a couple more swings there. We have broken mats under the swings, and under every swing there should be like a rubberized mat, even if we have wood chips. So we would want to replace those. And we'd also want to evaluate any rusted out or missing bolts or areas that we could maybe replace. So if we also decided to change the ground there from wood chips to rubberized material, but keep the old playground structure, I've been getting certain quotes or estimates of about $100,000 for rubberized grounds. So basically, it's a little tough knowing exactly what we should do. And our Recreation Commission has been discussing this and kind of debating back and forth. The most dire need is replacing the annex playground, because it's wood. And it is rotting and cracking. So in our view, we think that is first priority. Not to say Bicentennial is second by any means, because we want to make sure both playgrounds are up to par. But because the certified playground safety inspector said we might have a few more years left if we do certain things with the Bicentennial Playground, we could go that route. The other route that has been discussed too is if we're able to get funding to replace both town playgrounds or like the playground structures themselves, that would be fantastic. But we're trying to be as conservative as we can in our estimates and what we can actually do.
Send me an email about my availability.
Okay.
So I don't know how in depth you want me to go through all the pictures and everything of all the playgrounds, or if you've all had a time to review that, or if you have any
I've seen them,
questions.
we went through it last year too, but
Mhm.
Yeah, and we recently had your presentation at the ARPA fund discussion that we have once a month, and Dana presented pretty much the same material.
Yes, because we want to be as frugal as possible with looking into all different areas of funding. So the different areas we're looking at right now are CPC funding. That application is due to the committee members on December 8th, and I believe president presenting on the 15th. Also, we have I have attended the ARPA meeting to inquire about funds there. And then, of course, there's always grants and possible community donations from local businesses or individuals. But I feel like we can't really move forward until we have a commitment of a certain amount of funding. Because, for example, the annex playground, there's a certain cost just for tearing down that structure, prepping the land, getting it all set to put a new structure on there. So, of course, it's my desire to do it all at the same time, but if we need to do it in phases due to funding, getting this funding for this and this, it's possible. Obviously, we don't want our playgrounds to be shut down for a long, long period of time because the community really enjoys them. So we're just trying our best to improve them and make them better.
And we don't want somebody to tell us to shut them down, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. So playgrounds are always play at your own risk, and as are any park space, right? We have signs up there, you know, saying open dawn to dusk, no dogs allowed. Do people bring dogs there? Yes, possibly. You know, you don't have someone there all the time supervising it, but the ultimate goal is to make sure our playgrounds are safe and in good condition. And for a long time now, the town has been a little short on funding and resources for our town playgrounds. So we're just trying to really kind of put it in people's minds that this is something that really needs to be addressed. So.
Yeah, and we need to get going on it, at least in some fashion, even if it's stepped out over a couple of years. Comments, questions from CIPC?
Yes. So
I know it's not ideal, but has the Recreation Commission looked at combining the playgrounds into one? I know we'd like to have them all over the town, but I go by this playground all the time, and I'd say 99% plus of the people that go to this playground are driving to it. You know, the parents are driving to it, you don't see a lot of kids walking to the playground. The other one, I do see some neighborhood kids at that playground, but have they looked at combining the two into one facility?
So basically demolishing or getting rid of one playground and just having one for the town. That idea has not come up in the Recreation Commission discussions, mostly because the nature of the town being more elongated, there is more of a south and a north area. I think if we were to do that, we might maybe hear some complaints that whichever one you choose to shut down, you know, you're preferencing that part of the community.
I would hope you would pick the one to close.
The advantages of the two town playgrounds are the Central Village one at the annex is near a lot of businesses in the village area, and it's on the way to the beaches. So, you know, just like at Handy Hill, for example, people will stop there because it's on the way. I think it's kind of similar with the annex playground. They might stop there because they know it's on the way there. It's right near Village Pizza, the ice cream places. And we do see kids playing there year round. Like even when it's cold out, our offices are right there and I do see people out there. There also is common nursery schools there. They use it every single day. The one on near on the Bicentennial Playground, your point's taken with like there's neighborhoods, there's houses right there, and so you might get more people walking to that location, or people who live there might go to that one obviously more often than the one that's in Central Village. So they also have a huge basketball court there and a skate park, although in my mind that skate park is in need of help too, but I'm not here to talk about that just yet today.
Well, we'll be here at the appropriate time. Further questions and comments?
Yes.
Melissa?
And maybe this isn't a question for now, or maybe information later, is what grants have you looked at, and is there possible for any type of in-kind funding or
Yes.
matching?
So I've been told that the Community Development Block Grant is a possibility to look into that, as well as there's something called a PARC, P-A-R-C grant. I did participate in like a Zoom meeting about the PARC grant because I wasn't as familiar. And it's a pretty involved grant. Like they don't fully fund it. So again, you kind of have to have a commitment of some funding from somewhere else before you apply for that grant. So, you know, again, it's kind of like, well, we can't apply for that just yet, but we could if we had a commitment from either capital projects or CPC or something like that. Yeah.
So some of them, like, there's even places like Walmart and other larger organizations that award funds, but sometimes it tends to be smaller amounts.
Mm-hmm.
When you're writing some of those grants, so sometimes, like you said, they require a match.
Right.
You can always do, a suggestion would it be to put a tentative match, because what they will do is if you submit your proposal and they award it, they won't give you the money until they know you've matched it with the town funds.
Yes.
So you can say that it's, you know, you're seeking those funds, but they're not going to necessarily award it until they know that you have it, but you can, because sometimes the deadlines don't permit the two. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, and that's definitely something we can look into as well. Right now, it just so happens that between CPC, ARPA, and the capital projects, we're going those routes right now because those meetings and applications are coming up and you know, so, but yes, I mean, we can look into grant funding as well and try to get tentative matches.
It almost seems like, I mean, it would be great to fund it all in one big project, but I wonder if you could do it in small increments or even just funding certain pieces. Like you talked about, like the ground.
Right.
And sometimes even doing naming, like, then that comes into the fundraising piece of,
Right.
and that's a lot of work.
Right, and it all takes a lot of time.
Which,
And
you
in the
guys
meantime-
do such a great job of what you do already.
Yeah, well, in the meantime, the playgrounds exist and people are playing on them. So, I would prefer it not to be a years-long project if we could, so we can just get it moving. I mean, if we had a commitment of some funds, some significant funds right now, we could probably demolish, just for example, the annex, the old playground possibly in the spring, and then build it in the summer, and then it would be there. So, again, we've gone back and forth in our rec commission about like, do we just do the annex? Do we wait and do the bicentennial later? But there are some concerns at the bicentennial that we really want to not ignore, right? And try and help. That's why we were calling that more upgrades. And there are some people on the rec commission who really believe strongly in that we should replace that one too. And maybe that's something we should do, but in 3 to 5 years, I mean, you can't predict the future, but it is an old playground as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I know this has come up before and is certainly general sentiment. Any further comments?
I think that, I don't know whether, as Melissa was saying, fundraising, like if you could get a group that would say, do the fundraising, for example, Cardamom, Cardamom could get their parents involved in just doing the fundraising for one piece of equipment or something, because they're using it every day, that if they could, instead of you running the fundraising, try to get somebody else to, coerce somebody else into doing the fundraising, even if it's for one piece of equipment, that piece is purchased through that fundraising effort.
Right.
And the only other thing is I do have, and I think I mentioned it to you, there's a small trust fund that still exists. I believe it's specific to the bicentennial
Yes.
playground. And that is something, again, if there are funds that need to be held, I could, if it's specific to that playground, I could
Yes.
do it there. If there
Yes.
needs to be another trust fund opened up or something, we can also do that for the other playground, or if they can somehow or other combine that trust fund into something else.
Yep.
Certainly willing to do that.
Yes.
It's one of those things I have, I would love to see that playground. My son was born in '93 and I spent a lot of time there with him when he was little. I now have a 2-year-old grandchild that I would love
Yeah.
to spend time there.
Yeah.
And I would like it safe for him.
Yeah.
My mixed feelings are that, unfortunately, when I look at the capital expenses and knowing what our budgets are, when you start weighing these things out, unfortunately, to me, this is a luxury versus some of the essential things that the town needs, and I know our funding is so tight. We won't
Right.
know that until we know fully what we have for free cash and what
Right.
all our projects are that are coming in front of us. But I just think that we're definitely going to need funding from other sources for
Yeah.
this.
I definitely hear you in that. I guess I would just say though, they are town playgrounds. They're not
They are.
school playgrounds.
No, I
They're
know.
not owned by a business, they're owned by the town. So the town is ultimately responsible for either upkeeping those playgrounds or
getting rid of
demolishing them
Yeah.
if we can't. And I hate to say that because, that would be a shame.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't want someone hurt, because if it's hurt, then it's our liability.
Right.
The town.
Right.
So
Well,
it's really important that it's safe, and it is a resource for our children, and it's important for a number of beneficial reasons: health, fresh air,
completely.
They're there doing something fun versus doing something.
In front of the TV,
Yeah.
computer
Yeah.
screen.
And it is multi-generational. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just for kids. But, I mean, parents, grandparents, they all take their kids. And so they're socializing, they're getting out, they're interacting with them outside of the home environment too, which is so important. They're meeting other people in the community. So it is, I like to say it's like the heart of the community sometimes, because that's where people gather and meet. You know, we don't have like, you know, a town square anymore, maybe, but the playgrounds are somewhat like that, right?
The school just put in a playground too, didn't they? Is that at the Macumba?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they
Or I
did
thought it was
do
at
some-
West, I
It
think.
was at the West.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, they upgraded.
Yep. They did it through Compan Company, and we also got a quote from them, and that was the high quote I mentioned from them. But again, everything's adjustable. So, like if we chose different items or to do different things, we could bring that cost down. So,
Okay, well, is the sentiment here, as it was before, that we think this is important for the town, varying degrees of intensity of emotion, and I think it's long overdue, and I think we at some point have got to do something. And we are looking at multiple sources of funds here, so Jane is very much aware of that, and if it means staging it out over a few years, and so be it, but at least seeing some forward motion would be worthwhile. So with that, I'll entertain any further questions, comments, and we'll just put it into the hopper, as they say, and
thank
give it
you.
its due, and
Thank you for your time.
we'll keep the ARPA discussion going as well, as you know.
All right, yes, for sure. Thank you so much.
And it was good to see you.
You too.
Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, well, that completes the presentation of the fiscal year 2024 capital request. Jim, you have an item here, review unfunded requests from the past fiscal year, which we're in now. Can you give us
Yeah, and
some lead on that?
this is just this list here, which I will be sending out, because I thought I sent it out, but I didn't see it. So these are items that we discussed last year that did not make the cut. We have the parking lot at the Westport Elementary School. I believe that's coming back. We haven't got a specific request, but the superintendent did mention it. There's a large mow for the highway department, recreational playground equipment that we just talked about, forestry truck for the fire department. I believe that's on the upcoming discussion next week as well. Town hall cameras, battery backups and switches, I think that's on the list too from the IT department. Yeah. So some of these things on last year that we did not get funded, will be discussed at next week's meeting. Town hall parking lot, council on aging floor replacement, HVAC system for the town hall. Yeah, we can discuss that in detail next week, but we've applied for a grant with Green Communities for that. We've also put in an application with the CPC, which we're waiting to hear. But we will need a match. It's about a $620,000 grant from the state. If we do get that grant from Green Communities, 500 from Green Communities, 119,000 I think from the utility company, and then a $10,000 incentive. But we would need to do the electrical upgrades here in the building in order to get that to work. So I'm hoping we can get CPC funding for that, but we'll discuss that next week. I think that's it.
Okay.
The other ones are on the list for upcoming discussions.
So on these ones that didn't make the cut last year, so to speak, they'll be revisited again.
Most of them are being revisited. Some of them have been substituted with other requests from the departments.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this item? Thank you. We'll look forward to more on this.
And I will send out this spreadsheet as well. This has all our requests going back to 2014 that were approved at town meeting. It's kind of broken out by different categories: general government, public safety, schools. The only thing that distorts it a little bit is some of the bigger loans are in here, but not all of them. So like I think the elementary school roof and a couple of other ones are in there. So you see the school real high. One year it's probably because
Yeah.
of
Okay.
a project like that. But just to give you an idea, there have been quite a few projects that have been funded over the years. It's been a pretty robust program. So.
Okay. So don't assume that item is completed. We have the item of other business. I don't have anything in mind. Does anybody else? Yeah. Is this the one that's usually 48 hours? I don't think open meeting allows other business.
You're right,
Yeah.
it should be 48 hours.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything that hasn't been discussed in the last 48 hours, so. But maybe change the wording on that in the future. There may be instances where that happens. We get a late request and we don't have 48 hours to deal with it, and we have it listed, we can discuss it. I don't intend to be critical on this. Okay, approve the minutes of February 8th. Muriel had sent those to us. I know we've probably all reviewed them. If anybody has any comments, questions, concerns, omissions, errors, or a motion to approve? Any of the above.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. You have that?
Yep.
Okay, discussion on the minutes? It seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? It was winter then. It's almost winter again. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And
Send it to Nadine. I'll send the proof on to Nadine for the website.
Send me a copy too, so I can put it in the folder. Thank you.
okay, and as discussed before, the next meeting is December the 7th, a week from now. It is 3:30 p.m. So we hope that meets
Modify that.
everybody's
Yes, thank you.
schedule. That shouldn't be a problem, because if we can hold to 90 minutes, just as a rough guide, we'd be done at 5.
And it may be easier for Brian and
Yeah.
Gary to attend at
Sure.
3:30.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the next item is a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
In the absence of any opposition, we are adjourned.